"Pack your things and get out of my house, thief," Amanda sneered, holding up her diamond bracelet. Tiana, in her chef's uniform, pleaded her innocence, but the billionaire, David, reluctantly believed his new fiancée. Tiana was fired on the spot. Months passed. Now David walked the dirt path of a new farm property he'd acquired, the scent of corn filling the air. He stopped, adjusting his suit, and froze. Kneeling by the crops was Tiana. His heart leaped, but then he saw the wooden cart. Inside sat 3 identical black triplet girls, and they had his eyes. But before we see, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, subscribe to the channel and let's get into the full story. "Your secret ingredient? What is it?" David Miller asked, leaning against the marble kitchen counter, watching his chef plate the final dessert of the evening. Tiana Johnson looked up from the perfectly arranged strawberry tart, a hint of pride in her smile. "If I told you, Mr. Miller, it wouldn't be a secret anymore." The vast kitchen gleamed under bright lights, quiet now that the catering staff had departed. Only the soft hum of industrial refrigerators broke the late-night silence in the 15-bedroom Beacon Hill mansion. "The investors couldn't stop talking about your food," David said, loosening his tie. "Senator Reynolds asked for your contact information. I told him you were exclusive to Miller Innovations." Tiana wiped her hands on her chef's apron. "Thank you for that. I'm not looking for other clients right now." At 38 years old, David Miller had achieved what most would consider the perfect life. His software company had revolutionized digital communication, making him one of the youngest billionaires in Boston. Yet standing in his empty kitchen at 1 in the morning, success felt hollow. "Will you be needing anything else tonight, Mr. Miller?" Tiana asked, checking her watch. "No, and please, after 6 months you can call me David." Tiana nodded, though they both knew she rarely used his first name. Their professional relationship had clear boundaries. He was the employer, she was the employee who managed his kitchen and catered his frequent business events. "Amanda called earlier," David said, picking up a leftover strawberry. "Her trip got extended. 3 more weeks in Europe." "I'm sorry to hear that," Tiana replied, though her tone remained neutral. She had met Amanda Wilson several times, the beautiful, polished daughter of Senator Wilson who had been dating David for the past year. "Don't be sorry. We could use the time to test some new menu ideas for the summer season," David suggested, his eyes brightening. "That mushroom dish tonight, it was different." "My grandmother's recipe with a few modern adjustments," Tiana explained, her passion for cooking momentarily overriding her professional reserve. At 30 years old, the Dorchester native had graduated top of her class from the Culinary Institute of America, bringing her unique blend of Southern family recipes and contemporary techniques to Boston's elite tables. "Tell me about your grandmother," David said, surprising them both with his interest. That night marked a shift. As Amanda's absence stretched from days into weeks, David found himself in the kitchen more evenings, first discussing menu plans, then sharing stories of his childhood in Somerville, listening as Tiana spoke of her grandmother who raised her after her parents' death. 1 week into Amanda's trip, they were laughing together as Tiana taught David how to properly chop vegetables. "You're holding the knife all wrong," she said, fighting a smile. "For a billionaire tech genius, you're terrible at basic kitchen skills." "Coding doesn't require knife techniques," he countered, deliberately making his next cut even worse. 2 weeks in, they sat at the kitchen island at midnight, sharing a bottle of wine while Tiana described her dream of owning a restaurant that combined farm-fresh ingredients with her family's Southern cooking traditions. "Why haven't you opened your own place?" David asked. Tiana's eyes dropped to her wine glass. "Money. Connections. Boston's restaurant scene is tight-knit. Without the right backers or family name, it's nearly impossible." "You have extraordinary talent," David said, his voice softer than usual. "Thank you," she replied, meeting his gaze. The third week found them in the kitchen at 2 in the morning. David had returned from a stressful board meeting to find Tiana testing recipes. Without speaking, she placed a plate before him, comfort food that somehow still looked elegant. "How did you know I needed this tonight?" he asked after the first bite. "Your text said the meeting ran long. Board meetings running long are never good news." David put down his fork. "No one else notices these things about me. I pay attention," Tiana said simply. When David reached for her hand across the counter, she didn't pull away. Later, neither could say who moved first, but their first kiss tasted of the raspberry sauce she had been perfecting. The next morning brought awkward smiles and unspoken questions, but by evening they had gravitated toward each other again. For 5 perfect days, they existed in a bubble of late-night conversations, shared meals, and increasingly intimate moments stolen in the quiet corners of the mansion. "This is crazy," Tiana whispered one night, her head on David's chest as they lay on the couch in his study. "Amanda comes back in 2 days." "I know," he said, his fingers tracing patterns on her arm. What might have developed between them ended abruptly when Amanda returned from Europe one day early, walking into the mansion as David and Tiana were laughing in the kitchen. "Darling, surprise!" Amanda called, her heels clicking on the marble floor. She was slim and blonde, dressed in designer clothes that emphasized her socialite status. David stepped away from Tiana immediately. "Amanda, you're back early." The conference ended sooner than expected. "I couldn't wait to see you." Amanda kissed David's cheek before turning to Tiana. "Something smells wonderful." "Just preparing tomorrow's lunch," Tiana said, her face composed despite the flush in her cheeks. The next morning, David asked to speak with Tiana privately in his office. His expression was distant, his posture stiff. The billionaire businessman had returned, replacing the man who had shared his thoughts and kisses just days before. "Amanda and I have history and a future together," he explained, not meeting Tiana's eyes. "What happened during her absence was a mistake. I value your work here tremendously, but we need to return to our professional relationship." Tiana nodded once, her face carefully blank. "I understand completely, Mr. Miller." For 2 uncomfortable weeks, they avoided being alone together. Amanda filled the mansion with her friends and talk of charity galas, while Tiana retreated into the professional efficiency that had earned her the position in the first place. Then came the fundraising dinner that would change everything. 60 of Boston's wealthiest and most influential people filled David's mansion. Senator Wilson and his wife were present, along with tech investors, media moguls, and old money families. Amanda wore a stunning blue dress and the diamond bracelet David had given her for her birthday, a $200,000 piece that caught the light with every movement of her wrist. The evening proceeded flawlessly until coffee was served. Amanda's sudden scream cut through the polite conversation. "My bracelet! My diamond bracelet is gone!" She stood in the center of the main hall, her face contorted with distress. David rushed to her side. "Are you sure you were wearing it?" "Of course I'm sure. I had it on all evening." Amanda's eyes scanned the room wildly before focusing on something, or someone, by the door to the kitchen. "You!" Amanda pointed directly at Tiana, who had stepped into the hall to check on the coffee service. "I saw you hovering near my purse earlier when I put my bracelet in it during dinner." Tiana's face drained of color. "What? No, I never—" "Check her pockets! Check the kitchen!" Amanda demanded, her voice rising hysterically. Guests turned to stare. Senator Wilson stepped forward. "David, perhaps your security team should handle this discreetly." David stood frozen, looking between Amanda's tearful face and Tiana's shocked expression. The weight of 60 influential gazes pressed on him. His company's reputation, his social standing, his connection to Senator Wilson's political world, all hung in the balance. "James," David called to his head of security, "please search the kitchen and staff areas." "I didn't take anything," Tiana said, her voice shaking but firm. "Mr. Miller, you know I wouldn't do this." Their eyes met across the room, hers pleading, his uncertain. 20 minutes of uncomfortable waiting later, no bracelet had been found. Amanda remained convinced of Tiana's guilt, becoming more vocal with each passing moment. "I want her fired," Amanda demanded, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "I won't feel safe with a thief working here." David felt dozens of eyes on him, waiting for his decision. Senator Wilson placed a hand on his shoulder. "Sometimes tough decisions must be made quickly, son," the older man murmured. "This kind of scandal could affect everything if not handled decisively." David took a deep breath and crossed the room to where Tiana stood, her head held high despite the humiliation. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I need to ask you to leave." "Without even hearing my side?" Tiana whispered, disbelief and hurt flooding her eyes. "It's best for everyone if we handle this cleanly. James will escort you out." David couldn't meet her gaze. "We'll send your final payment." "I didn't do this," Tiana said, her voice breaking. "After everything, you won't even give me the benefit of the doubt?" Security guards appeared at her sides. As they led her toward the door, Tiana's eyes remained fixed on David, not with anger, but with profound disappointment. "Sometimes we show who we truly are in moments of crisis, Mr. Miller," she said just before the mansion doors closed behind her. In the silent aftermath, David turned to find Amanda being comforted by her mother, the fundraising guests whispering among themselves, and an emptiness in his chest that had nothing to do with the missing bracelet. The cold Boston air hit Tiana's face as she stepped onto the sidewalk outside the mansion. The security guard closed the heavy door behind her without a word. She stood there, still wearing her chef's coat, holding back tears. "This can't be happening," she whispered to herself, looking up at the grand house where just moments before she had been publicly accused of theft. Tiana's phone buzzed. It was a text from Maya, one of the catering staff who had worked the event. "Are you okay? Everyone is talking inside. That was awful." Tiana couldn't bring herself to respond. She ordered a rideshare and waited, hugging herself against the cold. The fancy cars of Boston's elite lined the street, a painful reminder of the world that had just rejected her. 20 minutes later, Tiana entered her small apartment in Dorchester. She dropped her chef's coat on the floor and sat on the edge of her bed, finally allowing tears to flow freely. The next morning, Tiana woke with puffy eyes and a sense of determination. She opened her laptop and began sending emails to restaurant contacts throughout Boston. "Someone will hear my side," she told herself as she prepared for an interview at Carlisle's, an upscale restaurant in Back Bay. The restaurant manager, Kevin, greeted her with an uncomfortable smile. "Tiana, I've always respected your work, but I need to be honest. Amanda Wilson called this morning." Tiana's heart sank. "What did she say?" "She warned us not to hire you. Said you stole from her at Miller's house." Kevin looked down at his desk. "I'm sorry, but we can't risk our reputation." This scene repeated itself across Boston over the next 2 weeks. By the third week, Tiana had been turned away from 7 restaurants. Her savings were dwindling fast. That evening, her college roommate Lisa called. "Tiana, you sound terrible. What's going on?" After Tiana explained everything, Lisa didn't hesitate. "Come stay with me in Springfield. You need to get out of Boston." 3 days later, Tiana packed her car with everything she owned. She took one last look at the Boston skyline before driving west. Lisa's apartment was small but welcoming. "Stay as long as you need," she said, helping Tiana bring in her bags. For a week, Tiana barely left the couch, feeling sick every morning and exhausted all day. Lisa finally convinced her to see a doctor. "Ms. Johnson," the doctor said, looking at her test results, "you're pregnant." Tiana stared at him in shock. "That's not possible. I can't be." But as the doctor explained the test results, Tiana's mind flashed back to those 5 days with David before Amanda returned. Back at Lisa's apartment, Tiana sat with her phone in hand. "You need to tell him. Lisa urged. "What if he doesn't believe me?" "He already thinks I'm a thief." Despite her doubts, Tiana dialed David's office number. A crisp female voice answered. "Miller Innovations, how may I direct your call?" "This is Tiana Johnson. I need to speak with David Miller. It's important." "I'm sorry, Miss Johnson, Mr. Miller is unavailable." "Please, it's urgent. Can you tell him I called?" "I'll make a note of it," the assistant replied coldly before ending the call. Tiana tried again the next day and the day after that. Each time, the response grew more dismissive. On her fourth attempt, the assistant didn't even let her finish. "Ms. Miller has instructed that we no longer accept calls from kitchen staff. Please stop calling." "Kitchen staff? I need to tell him something important about—" "Mr. Miller is not interested in the help's drama. Goodbye, Miss Johnson." The line went dead. Meanwhile in Boston, David sat in his office staring at the wall. The fundraiser had been 3 weeks ago, but he couldn't shake the image of Tiana's face as she was escorted out. His CFO, Michael Thompson, entered without knocking. "You've been staring at that wall for 20 minutes, Michael said, taking a seat across from him. "I have a lot on my mind." Michael leaned forward. "Is this about the chef you fired? The one Amanda accused of stealing?" David tensed. "How did you know?" "Because you haven't been yourself since that night." Michael paused. "Did you ever find any proof she took the bracelet?" "No," David admitted. "Security searched everywhere." "So you fired her without actual evidence? Just Amanda's word?" David stood up and walked to the window. "I had 60 powerful people watching me. Senator Wilson was right there. What was I supposed to do?" "Maybe investigate before deciding?" Michael suggested. "That's what you'd do for any business decision." David had no answer. Later that night, he lay awake beside Amanda in his bedroom, the conversation with Michael replaying in his mind. "What are you thinking about?" Amanda asked, touching his arm. "Nothing important," he lied. "Just work." "I've been looking at wedding venues," Amanda said, moving closer. "The Boston Harbor Hotel has an opening next summer." "That's great," David replied, not feeling excited at all. In Springfield, Tiana's situation grew more desperate. Her small savings wouldn't last through her pregnancy, and Lisa's one-bedroom apartment couldn't accommodate a baby. "There's a job listing I found," Lisa said one evening, showing Tiana her laptop. "It's at Williams Farm in western Massachusetts. They need someone to help with farm-to-table events, room and board included." "I don't know anything about farming," Tiana said doubtfully, "but you know everything about food, and it gets you completely away from Boston." 2 days later, Tiana drove her car down a long dirt road leading to Williams Farm. Fields of green stretched on both sides. The main house was a large white farmhouse with a wide porch. An elderly woman with silver hair opened the door. "You must be Tiana. I'm Martha Williams." Martha led Tiana to the kitchen where her husband George sat at a wooden table. "Tell us why you want to work on a farm," George said after introductions. "Your resume says you worked for fancy folks in Boston." Tiana took a deep breath. "I need a fresh start. I'm pregnant and alone. I'm a hard worker and I know food, how to grow it, prepare it, and serve it." Martha and George exchanged glances. "Well, at least you're honest," George said. "Can you cook something for us right now? With whatever you find in our kitchen?" An hour later, they sat eating Tiana's improvised farm lunch. "This is the best meal I've had in years," Martha declared. George nodded in agreement. "We have a small cottage behind the main house. Needs some fixing up, but it could be good for you and a little one. We host dinner events for people who want to experience farm-to-table dining," Martha explained. "We need someone who understands food the way you do." "When can I start?" Tiana asked, hope rising for the first time in weeks. That evening, Martha showed Tiana to the cottage. It was small but clean with a bedroom, tiny kitchen, and living area. "It's perfect," Tiana said, running her hand over the wooden table. "George will help you fix it up before the baby comes." Martha said warmly. "You're not alone anymore, dear." After Martha left, Tiana sat on the porch steps, watching the sunset over the fields. She placed her hand on her stomach, thinking about the life growing inside her. She took out her phone and looked at David's number one last time. After a moment of consideration, she deleted it. "It's just us now," she whispered to her unborn child. "We're going to be okay." As darkness fell over Williams' farm, Tiana made peace with her new beginning, unaware that 60 miles away in Boston, David sat staring at an old security camera image of her in his kitchen, his finger hovering over a phone number he didn't have the courage to call. The golden morning light filled the small cottage as Tiana opened her eyes. 7 months had passed since she first arrived at Williams' farm, and her life had transformed completely. She sat up in bed, placing both hands on her very pregnant belly. "Good morning, little one," she said, feeling a strong kick in response. Tiana moved slowly to the kitchen where a calendar hung on the wall. She marked off another day, exactly 2 months until her due date. Her phone buzzed with a message from Martha. "Breakfast ready when you are." George made pancakes. In the main farmhouse, Martha Williams stood at the stove while her husband George set the table. Both in their 70s, they had become the family Tiana needed. "There she is," Martha said warmly as Tiana entered. "How did you sleep?" "Better than yesterday," Tiana answered, lowering herself carefully into a chair. "The baby was doing gymnastics all night." George placed a plate of pancakes in front of her. "Eat up. We've got the big farm dinner tonight. 28 people already signed up." The Williams farm dinners had become Tiana's pride. When she first suggested hosting farm-to-table events, Martha and George were hesitant. Now, 7 months later, they had to limit reservations because too many people wanted to come. "I finished the menu yesterday," Tiana said between bites. "We'll use those new tomatoes from the East Field." After breakfast, Tiana and Martha sat on the porch planning the dinner. George approached with a small wooden object in his hands. "Look what I finished," he said, presenting a beautifully crafted baby mobile with tiny wooden farm animals. Tiana touched the delicate pieces. "George, it's beautiful." "Every baby needs something to look at," he said gruffly, clearly pleased by her reaction. Later that morning, Tiana drove to her doctor's appointment in the nearby town. These monthly visits were routine now, but still made her nervous. Dr. Bennett, a kind woman in her 50s, greeted Tiana with a smile. "How are we feeling today?" "Tired, bigger than yesterday, hungry all the time." The doctor laughed. "All normal. Let's do your ultrasound." Tiana lay back on the examination table, the cold gel on her stomach now familiar. Dr. Bennett moved the ultrasound wand slowly, looking at the screen with focused attention. Then her eyes widened. "Tiana," she said carefully, "I'm seeing something unexpected." "Is something wrong?" Tiana asked, her heart racing. "Not wrong, just surprising." Dr. Bennett adjusted some settings on the machine. "I'm seeing multiple heartbeats, 3 to be exact." "3?" Tiana repeated, not understanding. "You're carrying triplets." "Identical triplets from what I can see." Tiana stared at the ceiling, stunned. "Triplets? How is that possible? You said I was having one baby." "Identical triplets are extremely rare," Dr. Bennett explained. "The embryo split twice. It happens in about 1 in 200,000 pregnancies. No wonder you've been feeling so much movement." Tiana left the doctor's office in a daze, 3 ultrasound pictures in her hand. When she returned to Williams' farm, Martha took one look at her face and knew something had happened. "Tiana, what's wrong?" "I'm having triplets," Tiana said, still not quite believing it herself. 3 babies, all girls." Martha gasped, then hugged her tight. "Oh my goodness, 3 babies!" George, who had been fixing a chair on the porch, dropped his hammer. 3. At once? That evening, instead of hosting the farm dinner as planned, Martha called to reschedule while George made phone calls to find extra cribs. Tiana sat on the porch swing trying to process this new reality. "We'll need to convert the storage room in your cottage to fit 3 cribs," Martha said, already making plans. "I can't afford 3 babies," Tiana whispered. "One was already going to be hard." Martha sat beside her. "You have us now. We'll figure it out together." The next morning, Tiana woke to find a local newspaper reporter at the door. "Miss Johnson? I'm Stephanie from the Western Massachusetts Daily. Dr. Bennett called us about your triplets. We'd love to do a story. Identical triplets are extremely rare." Before Tiana could refuse, Martha appeared behind her. "Of course she'll do the interview. This is exciting news for our whole community." The story ran 3 days later. Rare identical triplets expected at local farm. The article mentioned Williams Farm and their farm-to-table dinners. Suddenly, their phone was ringing constantly with dinner reservations and well wishes. Meanwhile, in Boston, David sat across from Amanda in his penthouse living room trying to control his frustration. "You canceled my meeting with the research team without telling me," he said. "That project has been planned for months." Amanda shrugged, checking her manicure. "The governor's wife invited us to lunch. That's more important than some boring research meeting." "It's my company, Amanda. You can't rearrange my schedule without asking me." "I'm trying to help you, David. These connections will be valuable when we're married." David stood up and walked to the window. Over the past months, Amanda's controlling behavior had become more obvious. What he once saw as helpfulness now felt suffocating. The next day at Miller Innovations headquarters, David called an emergency meeting with his executive team. "I want to launch a new division," he announced. "Agricultural technology." Michael Thompson raised an eyebrow. "Agriculture? That's a major shift from our communication software." "The future of food matters," David said firmly. "Sustainable farming, irrigation systems that conserve water, soil monitoring technology. I've been researching this for months." "We would need testing grounds," said Rebecca from the development team. "Exactly," David nodded. "I want to purchase farmland, somewhere we can implement these technologies in real conditions." Michael spread maps across the conference table. "Western Massachusetts has affordable farmland, good soil, reasonable distance from Boston." David studied the maps, his finger tracing the region. "This area looks promising. I'll have real estate start looking," Michael said, making notes. 2 weeks later, David signed papers to purchase 50 acres of abandoned farmland in western Massachusetts. For the first time in months, he felt excited about his work. At Williams Farm, now in her 8th month, Tiana had become a local celebrity. The farm dinners were booked solid, with people driving from as far as New York to experience her cooking and see the famous triplet mom-to-be. Martha had knitted 3 matching baby blankets, while George converted the storage room into a nursery with 3 white cribs. The local community, charmed by the story, had organized a baby shower, bringing gifts for the soon-to-be family of 4. One evening, during a sold-out farm dinner, Tiana was serving the main course when she felt a sharp pain. She ignored it until a second, stronger pain made her drop a plate. "Tiana?" Martha hurried to her side. "Something's wrong," Tiana whispered. "The babies aren't due for another month." "George?" Martha called. "Start the truck." They rushed Tiana to the hospital, leaving confused dinner guests behind. At the hospital, Dr. Bennett met them at the entrance. "She's in early labor," she told Martha and George in the waiting room. "With triplets, this is actually common." For 7 hours, Tiana labored while Martha held her hand. When the first baby emerged, the room filled with the sound of a healthy cry. "This is Zara," the doctor announced, placing the tiny infant briefly on Tiana's chest before preparing for the next delivery. 15 minutes later, Zoe arrived, followed by Zuri 10 minutes after that. 3 identical baby girls, each with a strong cry and a full head of dark hair. "They're beautiful," Tiana whispered before a sudden pain gripped her. "Her blood pressure is dropping," a nurse called out. "She's hemorrhaging." Martha and George were ushered to the nursery with the triplets while doctors worked to stabilize Tiana. Hours passed before Dr. Bennett found them. She's stable, but she'll need special care. The multiple birth caused complications. Over the next week, Martha and George learned to feed, change, and care for the triplets while Tiana recovered. They brought the babies to her room several times a day. "They all have his eyes," Tiana said quietly one afternoon as she held Zuri. All three girls had distinctive gray-blue eyes that reminded her painfully of David. When Tiana was finally discharged, the hospital billing department presented her with a stack of papers. The complications and neonatal care for 3 babies had resulted in enormous medical bills. "Don't worry about that now," Martha said, seeing Tiana's face. "Let's get you and the girls home." Back at Williams' farm, Tiana slowly adjusted to life as a mother of 3. Martha and George became expert baby handlers, taking shifts during the night so Tiana could rest. One evening, as Tiana kissed each daughter goodnight, noticing their identical gray-blue eyes that so resembled their father's, she felt a strange sense of peace despite the challenges ahead. Outside her window, the first stars appeared over Williams' farm. Unknown to Tiana, David Miller had just finalized the purchase of the abandoned apple orchard directly adjacent to her new home. The apple trees stood bare in the late winter chill as David's car pulled up to the property line. He stepped out, zipping his jacket against the cold, and looked over the abandoned orchard he had just purchased. 4 months had passed since he signed the paperwork, but this was his first visit to the site. "It's bigger than I expected," he told Michael, who had accompanied him on the 3-hour drive from Boston. 50 acres, enough space to test all your agricultural technology ideas," Michael replied, consulting his tablet. "The old farmhouse needs complete renovation, but the barn structure is solid." Meanwhile, just beyond the line of trees marking the property boundary, Tiana Johnson settled into the rocking chair in her cottage, cradling Zuri while Zara and Zoe slept in their cribs. The triplets were 4 months old now, their identical faces showing tiny hints of individual personalities. "There we go," Tiana whispered as Zuri's eyes finally closed. She carefully placed the baby beside her sisters and tiptoed out of the nursery. In the main room, Martha Williams sat knitting tiny hats. "All 3 down?" she asked. "Finally." Zuri fought sleep again. Tiana stretched her tired back. "Thank you for watching them this morning so I could help with the dinner prep. George and I love those little girls like they're our own," Martha said, her knitting needles clicking steadily. "Have you thought more about next week's farm dinner?" "We already have 20 reservations." The Williams farm events had gained popularity after the triplets were born. People came for Tiana's cooking but stayed to catch glimpses of the identical baby girls who had been featured in local news. "I'm thinking early spring menu," Tiana said, checking her notes. "The greenhouse lettuce is ready, and we can use the preserved tomatoes from last fall." Back at the orchard, David walked the perimeter of his new property. His real estate team had chosen well. The land had good soil, a water source, and enough flat ground for testing irrigation systems. "The neighbors run some kind of farm-to-table operation," Michael said, pointing toward Williams' farm. "Could be good potential partners." David nodded, his mind elsewhere. His relationship with Amanda had grown increasingly strained over the past months. Just yesterday, they'd had another argument about his agricultural projects. "I don't understand why you're wasting time playing farmer," Amanda had said in their Boston penthouse. "The governor invited us to his summer house, but you want to visit dirt and trees instead." "This is important work," David had replied. "Sustainable farming technology could help millions of people." Amanda had rolled her eyes. "This farmer phase is embarrassing, David. When we're married, you'll need to focus on connections that actually matter." Now, standing on his new property, David felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Here, 3 hours from Boston, no one cared about his billionaire status or his social obligations. "I'm going to stay overnight," he decided. "Check into that inn we passed in town. I want to walk the whole property tomorrow." Michael looked surprised. "What about the teleconference with Tokyo?" "Reschedule it. I need time here." After Michael left, David continued exploring until dusk. As darkness fell, he drove to the Maple Creek Inn. a small establishment in the nearby town. The innkeeper, a friendly woman named Betty, checked him in. "What brings you to our little corner of Massachusetts?" she asked. "I bought the old Peterson orchard," David replied. "Oh, will you be bringing it back to life? Such a shame to see it abandoned these past years." Betty handed him a room key. "If you're interested in agriculture, you should check out Williams Farm while you're here. They do these wonderful dinner events with food grown right on their land." David froze. Williams Farm? Just next to the Peterson place, Martha and George Williams run it with a young chef who came from Boston. Makes the most incredible meals. Betty lowered her voice. She had identical triplets a few months back. Quite the local story. David barely heard the rest of Betty's cheerful conversation as she directed him to his room. Once alone, he opened his laptop and searched for information about Williams Farm. There it was, a local news article with the headline, "Rare Identical Triplets Born to Williams Farm Chef." The photo showed Martha and George Williams with a familiar face between them. Tiana Johnson, looking tired but happy, holding 3 tiny babies. 4 months ago, David whispered, quickly calculating dates. His hands shook as he closed the laptop. The next morning, David woke before sunrise. He couldn't explain the urgency that drove him back to his property at dawn, nor why he found himself walking toward the boundary line with Williams Farm. As the sun rose, he moved carefully through the trees until he could see the farmhouse and a small cottage behind it. Movement caught his eye. Someone was hanging laundry on a line. As the figure turned, David's breath caught in his throat. Tiana. She looked different. Her hair was longer, and she moved with the careful efficiency of a new mother. She hung tiny clothes on the line, pausing occasionally to check a wooden wagon beside her. David moved closer, staying hidden among the apple trees. From this new angle, he could see into the wagon. 3 identical baby girls lay bundled against the morning chill, all with dark hair and round faces. As one of them turned her head, David caught a glimpse of striking gray-blue eyes, the exact shade of his own. "Impossible," he whispered, but even as he said it, he knew. These were his daughters. David retreated quickly, his mind racing. Back in his car, he searched for more information about the triplets. A local newspaper website provided what he needed. The babies had been born almost exactly 9 months after Tiana left his house. His phone buzzed with Amanda's name on the screen. He declined the call. That evening, David sat alone in the inn's small dining room, pushing food around his plate while his mind replayed the morning's discovery. His phone had registered 12 missed calls from Amanda throughout the day. Finally, he answered the 13th call. "Where have you been?" Amanda demanded. "I've been trying to reach you all day." "I'm still at the property," David replied flatly. "Well, I have wonderful news. I announced our wedding date on Instagram, June 12th at the Boston Harbor Hotel. Everyone is thrilled." David nearly dropped the phone. "You announced our wedding date without discussing it with me?" "I knew you'd be busy with your farm project," Amanda said dismissively. "Besides, we've been engaged for months." It was time to set a date. "We need to talk when I get back," David said. "About the wedding?" "I already have ideas for—" "No, Amanda. About us." After ending the call, David made a decision. In the morning, he would visit Williams Farm officially. He needed to see Tiana face to face. Back at the cottage, Tiana placed the last baby in her crib. All 3 triplets were finally asleep after a challenging evening. Zara had been fussy, Zoe had refused her bottle, and Zuri had only settled after being rocked for an hour. Martha knocked softly on the nursery door. "Need anything before we head to the main house?" "We're good now, thanks." "They should sleep for at least 3 hours." "George wants to show you his plans for the vegetable garden tomorrow. Says he has ideas for the summer menu." Tiana smiled, grateful for these people who had become her family. "Tell him I'll come by after the morning feeding." Once alone, Tiana stood watching her daughters sleep. Despite the exhaustion and financial worries, These 3 little faces brought her more joy than she'd ever known. She thought briefly of their father, something she allowed herself only in quiet moments like this. David would never know these precious girls, never see how Zara already showed his determination, how Zoe had his thoughtful expression, how Zuri's smile transformed her whole face just like his did. The next morning, Tiana woke early. The triplets had surprisingly slept through the night. She quickly dressed and prepared their bottles, knowing all 3 would wake hungry at the same time. As she opened the cottage door to bring in the morning paper, something caught her eye. A figure standing at the edge of the property near the old apple orchard. A man in an expensive coat, looking directly at her cottage. Tiana squinted against the morning sun, then froze as recognition dawned. The bottle in her hand crashed to the floor. It couldn't be, but it was. David Miller stood at the edge of William's farm, watching her with an expression she couldn't read. As their eyes met across the distance, Tiana felt the carefully constructed walls of her new life begin to crumble. Behind her, the triplets began to cry, their identical voices rising in perfect harmony. David took a step forward, then another, moving toward the sound of his daughters. "Stop right there!" Tiana called out, her voice shaking as David walked toward her cottage. She quickly stepped outside, pulling the door closed behind her to shield the crying babies from view. "What are you doing here?" David stopped several feet away. "I bought the orchard next door. I had no idea you were here until yesterday." The triplets' cries grew louder inside the cottage. Tiana glanced nervously at the door. "Those are my daughters, aren't they?" David asked quietly. Before Tiana could answer, Martha emerged from the main farmhouse, moving quickly across the yard. "Tiana? Is everything okay?" Martha called, then stopped short when she saw David. "Who is this?" Tiana's hands trembled. "Martha, this is David Miller, the father." Martha's friendly expression hardened immediately. "The man who fired you without cause? The one whose assistant blocked all your calls?" David looked stricken. "You tried to call me?" "Many times," Tiana replied coldly. "Your assistant said Mr. Miller wasn't interested in the help's drama. I got the message." The baby's cries grew more insistent. Tiana sighed, torn between continuing this confrontation and tending to her daughters. "I need to feed them," she said finally. "You can come in for 5 minutes. Then you need to leave." Inside the cottage, 3 identical faces with scrunched-up features and gray-blue eyes greeted them from their cribs. David stood frozen in the nursery doorway, staring at the babies in disbelief. "They have my eyes," he whispered, "and your chin. And your stubborn attitude," Tiana said, lifting Zara first. "Martha, could you help with the other 2? Their bottles are ready in the kitchen." Martha hesitated, clearly reluctant to leave Tiana alone with David, but the hungry cries won out. She picked up Zoe and headed to the kitchen. "What are their names?" David asked, still standing awkwardly in the doorway. "Zara, Zoe, and Zuri Johnson," Tiana replied, emphasizing the last name. George appeared in the hallway behind David, his weathered face suspicious. "Everything all right in here, Tiana?" "It's fine, George. This is David, the girl's father. He just found out about them." George's expression remained stern. "Found his way here pretty quick for someone who didn't want to take your calls." David turned to face the older man. "I never knew she called. I never knew about the babies." "Convenient excuse," George muttered, but he backed away, giving them space while staying within earshot. Once all 3 babies had bottles in their tiny hands, with Tiana, Martha, and David each holding one, the cottage grew quieter. David stared down at Zuri in his arms, her eyes, his eyes, looking back at him curiously. "How did this happen?" he asked softly. Tiana gave him a look. "I think you know exactly how it happened. Those 5 days before Amanda came back early." David shook his head. "No, I mean, triplets? Identical triplets, very rare. The embryo split twice, Tiana explained. I didn't know until my 7th month. By then, I had already started a new life here. Why didn't you tell me? Tiana's calm exterior cracked. Are you serious? After you publicly humiliated me? After you chose Amanda over even giving me the chance to defend myself? After your assistant blocked every attempt I made to contact you? Her voice had risen enough to startle Zara, who began fussing in her arms. Let's move to the living room, Martha suggested, giving David a look that clearly said to watch his words. Seated on the well-worn couch with the triplets now calm, David studied each tiny face. They're beautiful, he said. Perfect. Yes, they are, Tiana agreed. Despite her anger, pride filled her voice. I want to help, David said. Financially, I mean, and I want to be part of their lives. Tiana looked away. We've managed fine without your money for 4 months. Martha cleared her throat. That's not entirely true, Tiana. The medical bills are still piling up. Medical bills? David asked. There were complications after the birth, Martha explained when Tiana remained silent. She nearly died. The triplets needed special care. The insurance covered some, but I'll take care of all of it, David said immediately. We don't need your charity, Tiana snapped. It's not charity. They're my daughters. David's voice grew firmer. I missed the pregnancy and the birth. I've missed 4 months of their lives already. I'm not missing any more. George, who had been quietly watching from the doorway, finally spoke. Pretty words from a man who threw their mother out with nothing but accusations. David's phone began ringing. Amanda's name flashed on the screen. He silenced it without answering. I made a terrible mistake that night, David admitted. I was a coward. I chose my reputation and Amanda's word over what I knew about Tiana's character. Easy to say now, Tiana muttered. David's phone rang again. He turned it off completely. Would you show me how to change a diaper? He asked suddenly. The unexpected request caught Tiana off guard. After a moment, she nodded. For the next hour, David received a crash course in baby care. His first diaper attempt with Zara was a disaster that actually made Tiana laugh despite herself. His second try with Zoe went better. By the third attempt with Zuri, he was getting the hang of it. They're so small, he said, carefully wrapping Zuri back in her blanket. And so different, even though they look the same. Tiana nodded. Zara is the adventurous one, always moving. Zoe watches everything carefully before she reacts, and Zuri is the social butterfly. She loves faces and voices. As David handed Zuri back to Tiana, their fingers touched briefly. Tiana pulled away quickly. I should go, David said, checking his watch, but I want to come back. Tomorrow? The next day? I'll work around your schedule. Before Tiana could answer, all 3 babies began fussing simultaneously. They need their nap, Martha explained, already moving to take Zoe from David. I can help, David offered, but looked unsure. You hold Zara, Tiana said after a moment's hesitation. Follow me to the nursery. In the small nursery, Tiana showed David how to rock Zara gently while humming softly. Within minutes, all 3 babies were asleep in their cribs. They look so peaceful, David whispered, standing between Tiana and Martha. Martha tactfully excused herself, leaving them alone with the sleeping babies. I want to be in their lives, Tiana, David said quietly. I'll respect whatever boundaries you set. I'll sign any paperwork you want, just please don't keep them from me. Something in his voice, raw honesty she remembered from their late-night conversations in his kitchen, reached through Tiana's protective walls. You can visit, she said finally. 2 hours, 3 times a week to start. And yes, there will be legal paperwork. Relief flooded David's face. Thank you. As they stepped out of the nursery, David's phone vibrated in his pocket. He had turned it back on to check the time. He glanced at the screen and frowned. Problem? Tiana asked. Michael, my CFO, David explained. He says it's urgent. Tiana nodded. Take it. We're done here for today anyway. David stepped onto the front porch while Tiana stayed inside. His conversation was brief but intense. When he returned, his expression had changed. What is it? Tiana asked, despite herself. Amanda has been meeting secretly with our competitors. Michael found out this morning. David ran a hand through his hair. And that's not all. I've asked my security team to recover all the footage from the night of the fundraiser, the night you were accused of stealing the bracelet. Tiana stiffened. Why now? Because finding our daughters made me realize how much I lost by not trusting you that night. David moved toward the door. I need to get back to Boston, but I'll return in 2 days. Is 9 in the morning okay? Fine, Tiana said, still processing his words. As David reached for the doorknob, he paused. Can I ask one more thing? Tiana raised an eyebrow. Could I hold all of them at once before I go? Just for a moment? The request was so unexpected, so heartfelt that Tiana found herself nodding. They returned to the nursery where David carefully gathered all 3 sleeping babies into his arms, with Tiana helping position them safely. As he stood holding his daughters for the first time, tears filled David's eyes. I'm so sorry I wasn't there for you, he whispered, looking at Tiana. For all of you. The raw emotion in his voice cracked something in Tiana's heart. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. After David left, Martha found Tiana sitting on the porch steps. Are you okay? She asked, sitting beside her. I don't know, Tiana admitted. He seemed different, sincere. Martha patted her hand. People can change when they have something worth changing for. Those 3 little girls in there, they're worth it. He's looking into what happened with the bracelet, Tiana said quietly. After all this time. And what will you do if he finds the truth? Martha asked. Tiana looked toward the orchard where David had disappeared. I have no idea. David drove back to Boston with his mind racing. The drive that normally took 3 hours stretched longer as he pulled over twice, overwhelmed by the reality of his 3 daughters. He arrived at his Beacon Hill mansion close to midnight, walking through rooms that suddenly felt empty and meaningless. 3 daughters, he whispered to himself, standing in his massive kitchen where he and Tiana had first connected months ago. The next morning, David called Michael to his home office. The CFO arrived promptly at 9, surprised to find David already working. You're up early, Michael commented, accepting the coffee David handed him. I haven't really slept, David admitted. I need to tell you something important, but it stays between us. Michael nodded, his expression serious. I have children. 3 of them, identical triplet girls. Michael's coffee cup froze halfway to his mouth. What? When? With who? With Tiana Johnson, the chef Amanda accused of stealing. David explained everything, the brief relationship before Amanda returned from Europe, Tiana's firing, and his discovery at Williams' farm. They're 4 months old, Michael. I missed everything, the pregnancy, the birth, the first smiles. David's voice cracked. And now I need to fix this without Amanda finding out yet. Michael set down his cup. You're still planning to marry her? After what I told you about her meetings with your competitors? No, but I need proof about the bracelet before I confront her. If she really framed Tiana, I'll contact Jensen in security today, Michael promised. We'll find that footage. They spent the morning creating a plan. Michael would oversee the security investigation while David established a legitimate business presence near Williams' farm. We should redirect resources to the Agricultural Technology Division, David decided. That gives me a reason to be there regularly. Later that day, David met with his legal team to establish trust funds for the triplets, being careful not to reveal their existence yet. That evening, Amanda arrived at the mansion unannounced, carrying shopping bags. There you are! "Oh," she exclaimed, kissing his cheek, "you've been impossible to reach. Look what I found for the wedding." She pulled out fabric swatches and photos of flower arrangements, spreading them across the kitchen island. "Amanda," David interrupted, "why did you announce our wedding date without discussing it with me first?" She waved dismissively. "You've been so busy with work. Someone needed to make decisions. These are decisions we should make together." Amanda studied his face. "What's wrong with you? You've been acting strange ever since you bought that stupid farm property." "Orchard," David corrected automatically. "Whatever. The point is, you're not yourself lately. Is there something I should know?" For a brief moment, David considered telling her everything. Instead, he shook his head. "Just tired from the drive back. I need to make some calls before bed." Amanda left reluctantly, clearly suspicious. As soon as she was gone, David texted Tiana, "Is tomorrow at 9 still okay to visit the girls?" Her reply came 20 minutes later. Yes, they usually have their bottles then. The next morning, David left Boston at 5 to reach Williams' farm by 8:30. He brought 3 small stuffed animals, a lion, an elephant, and a giraffe. One for each baby. Tiana met him at the door looking tired but composed. "They're awake," she said, leading him inside. The triplets lay on a blanket on the floor, kicking their legs and making soft, cooing sounds. David sat cross-legged beside them, mesmerized. "Can I hold them?" he asked. "One at a time to start," Tiana advised. "They're more alert in the mornings." David picked up Zara first, remembering she was the adventurous one. She immediately grabbed his finger with surprising strength. "She has a strong grip," he said, smiling. "She'll be crawling before her sisters," Tiana predicted. "She already tries to roll everywhere." They spent the morning feeding, changing, and playing with the babies. David absorbed every instruction Tiana gave, asking questions and making mental notes. "How do you tell them apart?" he asked as Tiana changed Zoe's outfit. "I just know," Tiana replied. "But they also have different cries, and I use different colored socks when they're around other people." By 11, all 3 babies were napping. David helped Tiana tidy the living room. "I've set up trust funds for them," he told her, "and I'd like to help with the medical bills." Tiana hesitated before nodding. "The hospital has been calling about payments." "I'll take care of it today," David promised. Before he left, David surprised Tiana with a request. "Could you send me pictures sometimes? When I'm not here? I want to see them even when I'm in Boston." Tiana considered this. "Okay, but this doesn't change anything between us. We're co-parents, not friends." "I understand." In Boston, Amanda's suspicions grew as David made weekend trips to check on the orchard project. She noticed his distracted expressions when they were together and the way he now silenced his phone when it buzzed with text messages. After David left for his 3rd weekend trip, Amanda met with a private investigator in a small cafe far from their usual haunts. "I want to know where he goes every weekend," she told the man, "and who he's meeting. I'll need his vehicle details and usual departure times," the investigator said, making notes. "He leaves Friday afternoons around 4, Amanda supplied. Drives himself in the black Range Rover. At Williams' farm, David's visits became a regular part of Tiana's routine. The triplets seemed to recognize him now, their faces lighting up when he arrived. Martha and George gradually warmed to his presence as they watched his genuine efforts with the babies. "You're not as terrible at this as I expected," George admitted grudgingly after watching David successfully bathe all 3 babies one evening. "High praise from George," Martha whispered to Tiana. "He's starting to like your billionaire." "He's not my anything," Tiana corrected. "He's the girl's father." But even she had to admit that David was proving himself. When Zoe developed a high fever one night, David canceled an important meeting to drive 3 hours with a pediatric specialist from Boston. "You didn't have to do that," Tiana said as they sat watching the doctor examine Zoe. "Yes, I did," David replied simply. "She's my daughter." They spent that night taking turns holding Zoe, their shared concern temporarily bridging the gap between them. By morning, her fever had broken and David reluctantly prepared to return to Boston. "Thank you," Tiana said as he was leaving, "for bringing the doctor." David nodded, too tired for words. As he walked to his car, Martha joined Tiana on the porch. "That man is trying his hardest," Martha observed. "I see how you look at him sometimes." "I don't look at him any special way," Tiana protested. Martha just smiled knowingly. Back in Boston, Michael brought David the news he'd been waiting for. "Jensen found the complete security footage from that night," Michael said, placing a laptop on David's desk. "You need to see this." The video showed the fundraising dinner from multiple angles. Michael fast-forwarded to a specific timestamp. "Watch Amanda here," he instructed. On screen, Amanda could be seen discreetly removing her bracelet while pretending to adjust a flower arrangement. Later footage showed her retrieving it from the same spot after Tiana had been escorted out. "She planned the whole thing," David said, his voice hollow. "She deliberately framed Tiana." "There's more," Michael said grimly. "We found evidence she's done this before. 3 other household staff at her family's estate were fired over missing items that mysteriously reappeared later." David closed the laptop, his decision made. "I'm ending our engagement." "But not yet. I need to understand why she did this." That weekend at William's farm, David showed Tiana the footage on his laptop. He watched her face as she saw the truth. Amanda deliberately hiding the bracelet, then retrieving it later. "She set me up," Tiana whispered, tears forming in her eyes. "And you believed her." "I failed you," David admitted. "I can never undo that moment, but I can make sure everyone knows the truth." "What are you going to do?" Tiana asked. "End things with Amanda, publicly clear your name." "And then what?" David hesitated. "Then I want to be a real father to our daughters, however you'll allow me." Later that afternoon, as David helped feed the triplets their mashed bananas, Tiana noticed how comfortable he had become with the babies. Zuri reached for his face, smearing banana on his cheek, making him laugh. "You've changed," Tiana observed. "Having 3 daughters changes a person," David replied. That evening, after putting the babies to bed, Tiana took pictures of all 3 sleeping peacefully. On impulse, she sent them to David with a message. "They all smiled at the same time today. Wish you could have seen it." Minutes later, her phone buzzed with his reply, "Send video next time?" "I miss them already." As David sat in his Boston office reading Tiana's message, the door opened without a knock. Amanda walked in carrying a large portfolio. "I've narrowed the wedding venues down to 3, she announced, not noticing how quickly David turned his phone face down. "The Boston Harbor Hotel is my favorite." David's phone lit up with another message from Tiana. "The girls rolled over today." Amanda placed wedding brochures across his desk while David's eyes remained fixed on the hidden phone, his 2 worlds colliding in a single moment. "The Boston Harbor Hotel has the best waterfront views," Amanda continued, pointing to glossy photos. "We could invite 400 people easily." David slid his phone into his pocket, the message from Tiana still burning in his mind. He looked at Amanda's excited face and made a decision. "Actually, I have an idea," he said. "Let's have an engagement party first. Something spectacular at the Harbor Hotel." Amanda's eyes lit up. "An engagement party? That's brilliant. We could announce the wedding date there." "Exactly," David agreed, already forming his plan. "Give me 2 weeks to arrange it. I want it to be perfect." Amanda kissed his cheek. "This is why I love you." When you finally focus on something important, you go all out. After she left, David immediately called Michael. "I need to see you now," he said. It's time to end this double life. An hour later, they sat in David's private study, doors locked. I'm going to expose Amanda at our engagement party, David explained. I want every important person in Boston there to witness it. Michael whistled softly. That's bold. What about your daughters? I've already started legal arrangements. Trust funds are established, but I need to do more. David pulled out his tablet. I found property for sale near Williams Farm, a farmhouse with several acres and a separate building that could become a restaurant. Michael studied the listing. You're buying her a restaurant? I'm giving her the opportunity to pursue her dream, David corrected, while staying close to Martha and George, who've become family to her. The next morning, David contacted a real estate agent to purchase the property without revealing his identity. He also called Jensen, his security chief. I need the video evidence ready to display at the Boston Harbor Hotel in 2 weeks, he instructed. Multiple screens, perfect clarity, no technical issues. Consider it done, Jensen replied. What exactly are we planning? Justice, David said simply. That weekend, David arrived at Williams Farm with blueprints tucked under his arm. He found Tiana in the yard, hanging tiny clothes on a line while the triplets watched from a blanket. They get bigger every time I see them, he said, kneeling to kiss each baby's forehead. Zara almost rolled off the changing table yesterday, Tiana told him. Her coordination is getting better. Inside the cottage, after the triplets were fed, David unrolled the blueprints on the kitchen table. What's this? Tiana asked. A property I bought. It's about a mile from here. David pointed to the drawings. This main house needs renovation, but it's solid, and this separate building could be converted into a restaurant. Tiana stared at him. You bought a restaurant? No, I bought a property. What you do with the restaurant building is up to you. David watched her face carefully. Your dream was always to have your own place, right? Somewhere to showcase your cooking. I can't accept this, Tiana said automatically. You don't have to decide now. Just think about it. David picked up Zuri, who was fussing. I also wanted to tell you I'm having an engagement party in 2 weeks. Tiana's expression closed immediately. Congratulations. No, you don't understand. I'm not marrying Amanda. David lowered his voice, though Martha and George were outside. I'm going to expose her at the party. I'll show everyone the video of her hiding the bracelet. Tiana sat down heavily. You would do that? In front of everyone? You were humiliated publicly. Your reputation was destroyed publicly. The truth should come out the same way. David bounced Zuri gently in his arms. I've also arranged for official documents clearing your name to be filed with the police department. For a moment, Tiana was speechless. Then she asked, what will happen afterward? I'll be free to acknowledge our daughters publicly, to be their father without hiding. David hesitated. If that's what you want too. Before Tiana could answer, her phone rang. It was the hospital billing department. She stepped into the other room to take the call, returning with a worried expression. What's wrong? David asked. Nothing. Just hospital paperwork. The bills are handled, David assured her. I paid everything yesterday. Tiana's eyes widened. Everything? That was over $50,000. They were premature triplets with complications. Of course it was expensive. David shifted Zuri to his other arm. I missed 7 months of pregnancy and 4 months of their lives. Paying medical bills is the least I can do. Later, as David prepared to leave, Martha pulled him aside. Tiana told me about the property you bought, she said, and the restaurant. I'm not trying to buy her forgiveness, David explained. I just want to give her options. Martha patted his arm. I know, but be patient. Trust takes time to rebuild. Back in Boston, Amanda met with her private investigator at a quiet coffee shop. What did you find? She asked. The investigator slid several photos across the table. They showed David's car parked at Williams Farm. He's been visiting a small farm next to the orchard property, the investigator explained. It's run by an elderly couple named Williams. And? Who is he meeting there? I couldn't get close enough to see. They have a cottage behind the main house where someone else lives. That's where he goes. Amanda frowned. Find out who lives in that cottage. I want to know exactly what he's doing there. Yes, ma'am. The following Wednesday, Amanda surprised David with an unexpected request. I want to see this orchard you're so obsessed with, she announced over dinner. Let's drive out this weekend. David nearly choked on his wine. This weekend? Why the sudden interest? If it's important to you, it should be important to me, she said sweetly. We leave Friday morning. David immediately texted Michael. Emergency. Office. Now. An hour later, they were developing a backup plan. She knows something, David said, but she doesn't know about the triplets yet, or she'd have thrown that in my face. We need to keep her away from Williams' farm, Michael agreed. They arranged for a senior agricultural engineer to meet them at a different property 20 miles from Williams' farm. We'll tell her this is part of the larger project, Michael suggested. A testing site. Friday morning, David and Amanda drove toward western Massachusetts. David's phone buzzed with a text from Tiana. Zara crawled today. Video attached. He smiled but didn't check the message with Amanda beside him. You seem nervous, Amanda observed. Worried I won't like your farm? Orchard, he corrected again. And no, I'm just thinking about the engineering meeting. They spent 3 hours touring fields where David's team had installed irrigation prototypes. Amanda looked increasingly bored and suspicious. This is not what I expected, she said, as they drove away. I thought we'd see the property next to that Williams farm the real estate agent mentioned. David's grip tightened on the steering wheel. That property isn't ready for visitors yet. Maybe we should stop by anyway, since we're in the area. Another time, David said firmly. We have dinner reservations in Boston. That evening, alone in his study, David finally watched Tiana's video. Zara determinedly crawled across the cottage floor while her sisters watched. Tiana's laughter could be heard in the background. I'm missing so much, he whispered to himself. The next day, he arrived at Williams' farm earlier than usual. Tiana seemed different, less guarded. Zara, show Daddy what you did yesterday, she said, placing the baby on a blanket. It was the first time she had referred to him as Daddy to the triplets. The significance wasn't lost on either of them. After lunch, while the babies napped, David and Tiana sat on the porch. Amanda almost came here yesterday, he told her. I managed to take her somewhere else instead. That was close, Tiana said, looking worried. What if she finds out about the girls before your party? I won't let that happen. David paused. But if it did, would you be okay with me telling her about them? Tiana considered this. They're your daughters too. You have the right to acknowledge them. That night, as David drove back to Boston, his resolve strengthened. One more week until the engagement party. One more week of living a double life. The following Friday, David stood before a mirror adjusting his tie. The engagement party would start in 2 hours. Jensen had confirmed the video system was installed and tested at the Boston Harbor Hotel. His phone rang. Tiana. Zoe is sick, she said immediately. She has a fever of 102 degrees. I'm on my way, David said without hesitation. No, the party is tonight. We'll be fine. Tiana, she's my daughter. I'm coming. David called Michael next. I need you to delay the party. Tell everyone I had an emergency but will be there by 9. What happened? Zoe is sick. I need to go to Williams' farm first. Michael sighed. Go. I'll handle everything here. At Williams' farm, David found Tiana walking the floor with a crying Zoe. Her fever won't break, Tiana explained, her own face flushed with worry. David took the baby, feeling her hot forehead. Have you given her medicine? Yes, but it's not working. Martha wanted to take her to the emergency room, but the nearest one is 40 minutes away. David made a quick call, then turned to Tiana. My doctor will meet us at the cottage in 20 minutes. They spent the next 2 hours with the doctor, who diagnosed an ear infection and prescribed antibiotics. By the time Zoe finally fell asleep, it was past 8. The party, Tiana remembered suddenly. You need to go. David looked at his watch. If I leave now, I can make it by 9:30. Go. We'll be fine now. In the doorway, David turned back. Whatever happens tonight, the girls and I will be waiting, Tiana said softly. Those words stayed with David during his drive back to Boston. By the time he arrived at the hotel, adjusted his tie, and prepared to face the crowd of Boston elites, he knew exactly what he needed to do. The Boston Harbor Hotel ballroom sparkled with crystal chandeliers and flower arrangements. 300 of Boston's most influential people mingled, champagne glasses in hand. David stood at the entrance, scanning the crowd while Michael approached. You made it, Michael said, handing David a glass of water. Everything is ready. The screens are hidden behind those curtains. David nodded. Is the video queued up? Just give the signal when you're ready. Michael lowered his voice. How's your daughter? Better. The medicine is working. David straightened his tie. Let's get this over with. Across the room, Amanda stood with her parents, Senator and Mrs. Wilson, looking radiant in a blue gown. She waved excitedly when she spotted David. There you are, she called, rushing over. Where have you been? People have been asking. Family emergency, David said simply. Amanda frowned. What family? Your parents are right over there. I had something important to handle. David forced a smile as guests approached to congratulate them. The governor of Massachusetts shook David's hand firmly. Quite the celebration, Miller. Amanda told us you're planning a June wedding. That remains to be seen, Governor, David replied, earning a sharp look from Amanda. For the next hour, David played his part perfectly. He smiled for photos, accepted congratulations, and stood beside Amanda as she showed off her engagement ring. All the while, he watched the clock. At 9, waiters began filling champagne glasses for the toast. Amanda tapped a spoon against her glass, calling for attention. Thank you all for coming tonight, she began, her voice carrying across the ballroom. David and I are so happy to share our joy with you. David caught Michael's eye across the room. His friend nodded slightly, confirming everything was ready. As many of you know, we'll be getting married at this beautiful hotel in June, Amanda continued. But first, we have big renovation plans for our home. The East Wing needs updating, and we're completely redoing that awful kitchen where the thief worked. A few awkward chuckles rippled through the crowd. David felt his jaw tighten. This was the moment. Actually, he said loudly, stepping forward, I'd like to say something about that. Amanda smiled, clearly expecting a loving toast. Of course, darling. David took a deep breath. Many of you were at my home 7 months ago for a fundraiser. That night something valuable went missing. A diamond bracelet. The room grew quiet as people remembered the incident. A woman who worked for me was accused of theft, David continued. She was fired on the spot in front of all of you. Her name was Tiana Johnson. Senator Wilson stepped closer, his expression concerned. David, perhaps this isn't the appropriate time. It's exactly the right time, Senator. David raised his voice slightly, because integrity and truth are the foundation of any relationship, and I've recently discovered the truth about what happened that night. David nodded to Michael, who pressed a button on his phone. Suddenly, large screens descended from the ceiling around the ballroom. The security footage began to play. The crowd gasped collectively as they watched Amanda clearly removing her bracelet and hiding it in a flower arrangement. The timestamp showed this happening before she ever accused Tiana. Later footage showed Amanda retrieving the bracelet after Tiana had been escorted out. As you can see, David said into the shocked silence, the bracelet was never stolen. Tiana Johnson was innocent. Amanda's face drained of color, then flushed bright red. That video is fake. Someone doctored it. The footage is authentic, David replied calmly, verified by 3 independent security experts. Amanda turned to the crowd. He's doing this because he wants to break our engagement. He's been acting strange for months.
Amanda, David said quietly, just tell the truth. Instead, she turned on him furiously. You think you're so perfect? You've been sneaking around for months. You're probably cheating on me. Senator Wilson grabbed David's arm. Let's discuss this privately. There's no need for a public scene. David pulled away. No, Senator. Tiana was publicly accused. She deserves to be publicly exonerated. The ballroom had erupted into whispers and shocked conversations. Several reporters who had been invited to cover the social event were already typing frantically on their phones. Amanda's mother tried to guide her away, but Amanda shook her off. You'll regret this, David, she hissed. My father can ruin you. Your father can't change the truth, David replied. And the truth is, you deliberately framed an innocent woman because you didn't like her. Amanda's face contorted with rage. That chef was nothing, just the help. She meant nothing. Her words echoed in the suddenly quiet room. Even her supporters looked uncomfortable. Senator Wilson stepped between them. Amanda, that's enough. We're leaving. This isn't over, Amanda said, tears streaming down her face. She grabbed her purse and rushed toward the exit, her parents following quickly. David remained standing in the center of the ballroom as murmurs rose around him. Several people approached, including the governor. I was at that fundraiser, the governor said quietly. I remember how quickly that young woman was dismissed. This is disturbing. A reporter pushed forward. Mr. Miller, do you have a statement about these allegations against Ms. Wilson? They aren't allegations, David corrected. They're facts. Tiana Johnson did not steal anything. All charges against her have been formally withdrawn, and I publicly apologize for my role in wrongfully accusing her. More reporters gathered around him, shouting questions. Michael stepped in, creating a buffer. Mr. Miller will issue a formal statement tomorrow, he announced. For now, I think the video speaks for itself. As staff began clearing abandoned champagne glasses, most guests made awkward excuses to leave. David loosened his tie and checked his phone. He had a text from Martha. Zoe's fever is down. All girls sleeping peacefully. He texted Tiana, It's done. Your name is cleared. Michael approached with 2 security guards. Your car is ready at the side entrance. The front is swarming with reporters. Thank you for everything, David said. I'm going home. What about tomorrow? This will be everywhere by morning. Let it be. The truth should be everywhere. Back at his mansion, David ignored the increasingly frantic calls from Amanda and Senator Wilson. Instead, he called his lawyer. I need all the legal paperwork ready by morning, he instructed. I want to formally acknowledge my daughters. 3 birth certificates, corrected with your name as father, the lawyer confirmed. Anything else? Yes. I want to establish their legal residence at both Williams Farm and my new property nearby. And I need custody arrangements drawn up for co-parenting with Tiana Johnson. After hanging up, David walked through his empty mansion, seeing it through new eyes. The massive rooms felt cold and impersonal compared to Tiana's cozy cottage. He paused in the kitchen where they had first connected. His phone rang, a number he didn't recognize. Against his better judgment, he answered. You've made a serious mistake. Senator Wilson's voice was icy. My daughter may have acted foolishly, but publicly humiliating her was unnecessary. Your daughter deliberately framed an innocent woman, David replied. She destroyed Tiana's reputation and career. We could have handled this privately, found the chef, paid her off quietly. This wasn't about money. It was about the truth. The senator's voice hardened. The truth is, you've just made enemies you can't afford, son. My reach in this state goes very deep. Is that a threat, Senator? It's a reality check. Good night, Mr. Miller. David slept little that night.
At 5 in the morning, his phone began buzzing continuously with notifications. The story had broken across every major news outlet in America. Tech billionaire exposes socialite's scheme against chef. Senator's daughter caught. Framing household staff. Engagement party becomes public revelation of deception. By 7, David had dozens of missed calls. His lawyer, his publicist, his board members, and several former employees all wanted to speak with him. The former employees especially caught his attention. He returned one call from a woman named Teresa, who had worked as his housekeeper 2 years earlier. "Mr. Miller," she said when he answered, "I saw the news. I wanted to tell you this isn't the first time Amanda Wilson has done this." "What do you mean?" 3 years ago, I worked at the Wilson estate before coming to your house. She accused me of stealing earrings. I was fired, but later heard from another maid that the earrings were found in Amanda's own jewelry box. David took detailed notes. "Would you be willing to provide a formal statement?" "Yes, sir. Several of us would." By 8, David had spoken with 3 former employees with similar stories. Each added weight to the evidence against Amanda. He forwarded their information to his lawyer, then called Michael. "The story is everywhere," Michael reported. "Senator Wilson is issuing a statement claiming the video was manipulated." "Let him try," David replied. "I need to go to Williams Farm today. Can you handle things here?" "Of course. Go be with your family." Family. The word felt right. David packed a small bag, then headed to his car. As he pulled out of his driveway, reporters shouted questions and cameras flashed. He drove straight past them, heading west toward the 3 little girls who had changed everything. David was halfway to Williams Farm when his phone rang. It was Martha, her voice urgent. "There are reporters everywhere," she said. "They found out where Tiana lives. George is trying to keep them off the property, but they're lining up on the road." David gripped the steering wheel tighter. "How did they find her so quickly?" "Someone must have connected the dots after your announcement. They know she's the chef you mentioned." "Is Tiana okay? And the girls?" "We're all inside the cottage. The babies are fine, but Tiana's worried." "I'll be there in 30 minutes, David promised. "Tell George to let no one on the property." When David arrived, he found a dozen cars parked along the rural road. Reporters with cameras stood at the farm entrance where George had chained the gate shut. David parked in the neighboring field and cut through the orchard, avoiding the media. He knocked on the back door of the cottage where Martha quickly let him in. Tiana sat on the couch, all 3 babies nestled against her. Her face showed relief when she saw him. "You're here," she said simply. "I'm sorry about this," David replied, sitting beside her. "I never thought they'd find you so quickly." "Someone recognized me from the newspaper story about the triplets," Tiana explained. "The reporters started arriving at dawn." David looked at the babies, peacefully unaware of the chaos. "How's Zoe feeling?" "Better. The medicine worked." Tiana hesitated. "I saw the news. It's everywhere." Martha brought coffee for both of them. "Those poor girls don't need cameras in their faces. What are we going to do?" David took a deep breath. "We need to control this situation. If we don't address it directly, the reporters will just keep coming." "What are you suggesting?" Tiana asked. "One interview. With someone respectable. We set the terms, answer the questions once, and ask for privacy afterward." Tiana looked uncertain. "And tell them about the girls?" "They'll find out eventually," David said gently. "I'd rather we tell our story our way." While they discussed options, David's phone rang constantly. Finally, he answered a call from his publicist, Emma. "The story is huge," Emma reported. "Every major network wants an exclusive. And there's more. Amanda has left Boston. Her parents issued a statement saying she's gone to Europe for an extended break." "Good," David said. "Let her stay there." "There's something else," Emma continued. "People are asking about your relationship with Tiana. There are rumors you might have personal reasons for defending her so publicly. David glanced at Tiana, who was listening. "I'll call you back with a plan." After hanging up, David explained the situation. "We need to get ahead of these rumors. If we don't, someone will eventually discover the triplets and it will become an even bigger story." George, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "Those babies deserve their privacy, but hiding them like they're a secret isn't right either." Tiana nodded slowly. "One interview, we control it. No photos of the girls' faces." David agreed. "I'll have Emma arrange it for tomorrow. Someone who will be respectful." While David made calls, more reporters arrived outside. A news van parked on the road, its satellite dish extending upward. By afternoon, the story had evolved. A local reporter had discovered that Tiana had given birth to triplets, and now headlines were connecting the dots. Wrongfully accused chef and tech. Billionaire share secret children? David showed Tiana the news on his tablet. Her face paled. "It's happening so fast," she said. "We need to move up the interview," David decided. Today, if possible. Emma arranged for respected journalist Catherine Bell to come to Williams' farm that evening. While they waited, David received another call from Senator Wilson. "This has gone far enough, Miller," the senator said. "The damage to my daughter's reputation is substantial." The damage to Tiana's reputation was also substantial. David replied coldly. "The difference is Tiana was innocent. I'm prepared to offer you a very beneficial partnership with my energy holdings in exchange for toning down this situation. Perhaps a joint statement about a misunderstanding that was blown out of proportion." "Not interested, Senator. The truth is already out there." The senator's voice hardened. "You don't want me as an enemy, son. I have friends in regulatory agencies that could take a very close look at Miller Innovations." "That sounds like a threat." "It's a business proposition. Consider it carefully." David ended the call, his resolve strengthened. When he told Tiana about the conversation, she looked worried. "He's a powerful man, David. Are you sure about this?" "Absolutely sure," David replied. "I've spent too long worrying about appearances and connections. It cost me my integrity once. I won't let that happen again." At 6 that evening, Catherine Bell arrived with a single cameraman. Emma had negotiated strict terms. 30 minutes, no footage of the babies' faces, final approval on the edit. They set up in the main farmhouse living room. Martha and George sat with the triplets in another room while David and Tiana prepared. "Just be honest," David told Tiana, squeezing her hand. "That's all we need to do." The interview began with Catherine asking about the bracelet incident. Tiana explained her side calmly, describing the public accusation and how it destroyed her career in Boston. "And when did your relationship with Mr. Miller begin?" Catherine asked. "We became friends when Amanda was in Europe," Tiana answered honestly. "It was brief, but meaningful." "And the triplets are your daughters together?" David nodded. "Yes. I only discovered their existence recently, when I purchased the neighboring property for my agricultural technology project." "That must have been quite a shock," Catherine observed. "The biggest shock of my life," David admitted, "but also the greatest blessing." They explained their current arrangement, co-parenting, with David visiting regularly while maintaining his business in Boston. "And your engagement to Amanda Wilson?" Catherine asked. "Was clearly a mistake," David replied. "I should have trusted my instincts about Tiana's character that night. My failure to stand up for her is my greatest regret." The interview concluded with David formally acknowledging the triplets as his daughters and requesting privacy for their family. "We're just trying to create a stable environment for 3 little girls who deserve to know both their parents," he said. After Catherine left, promising the segment would air the next morning, Tiana looked exhausted but relieved. "You did great," David told her. "So did you." She paused. "What happens now?" "Now we figure out our new normal," David replied. "Starting with security for this farm. I've hired people to keep reporters away. They'll be here tomorrow." The next day, Their interview aired on national morning television. The response was immediate. Tiana received hundreds of supportive messages from people across the country. Williams Farm's website crashed from too many visitors trying to make dinner reservations. George came to the cottage looking bewildered. "We've got 200 emails asking about farm dinners. We've never had more than 30 people before." David received different reactions. Several board members called concerned about the scandal affecting stock prices, but Michael reported that most public opinion was supportive. "People love a redemption story," Michael said, "and the triplets humanize you. Your approval rating is actually up." Senator Wilson made good on his threats. By the end of the week, 2 regulatory agencies had announced routine audits of Miller Innovations. "Let them look," David told his legal team. "We have nothing to hide." The following weekend, David took Tiana to see the property he had purchased nearby. "It's just a 5-minute drive from Martha and George," he explained as they walked through the main house. The 2-story farmhouse needed work but had good bones. "This could be a beautiful home," David continued, "for whenever I visit the girls." Then he showed her the separate building, a former barn with high ceilings and large windows. "And this," he said, "could be your restaurant." Tiana walked through the space slowly, imagining possibilities. "The kitchen would go there," she said, pointing, "with big windows so diners could see the food being prepared." "So you like it?" David asked hopefully. Tiana nodded. "I do. But I want to be clear about something. If I open a restaurant here, it will be mine. I'll accept your help with the renovation, but I need to make it successful on my own." "I understand completely," David agreed. "This isn't about me buying your forgiveness, Tiana. It's about giving you the opportunity you deserve that Amanda tried to take away." That night, as they drove back to Williams Farm, Tiana turned to David. "Thank you," she said, "for clearing my name, for acknowledging our daughters, for everything." David smiled. "We have a long way to go. Building trust takes time." "Yes," Tiana agreed, "but it's a start." At the cottage, Martha met them with exciting news. "The girls tried rice cereal today," she announced. "And guess what? They all hated it exactly the same way. You should have seen their identical disgusted faces." They laughed together, stepping into the cottage filled with baby toys and the sounds of 3 little lives. Despite the chaos of the past week, in this moment, their world felt surprisingly right. 1 year later, Tiana moved confidently through the busy kitchen of Homegrown, her restaurant near Williams Farm. The converted barn had become exactly what she envisioned, a warm, welcoming space where her farm-to-table cuisine attracted visitors from across New England. "Chef, the governor's table just ordered the spring lamb," called her sous chef, Mark. "Perfect. Tell them I'll bring it out myself," Tiana replied, carefully plating the dish with fresh herbs from Martha's garden. The restaurant had been open for 6 months, and already food critics from Boston and New York had written glowing reviews. Tonight was especially busy because tomorrow was a special day, the triplets' first birthday. As Tiana approached the governor's table, she heard a familiar voice. There she is, the culinary genius herself. Michael Thompson sat with the governor and his wife, raising his glass in greeting. He had become a regular customer and supporter. "Everything is wonderful, Tiana," the governor's wife said warmly. "We drove all the way from Boston just for your lamb." "Thank you for coming," Tiana replied. "I hope you'll join us tomorrow for the girls' birthday party at Williams Farm. Nothing fancy, just family and close friends." "We wouldn't miss it," the governor said. "Those little girls have become celebrities in their own right." Later that night, after the last customers left, Tiana locked up the restaurant and drove the short distance to Williams Farm. The cottage she once occupied had become too small for 3 growing babies, so she now lived in a renovated section of the main farmhouse with Martha and George. She found Martha in the kitchen, finalizing decorations for tomorrow's party. "The girls are sleeping," Martha reported. David read them a story before he left for his house. David had fully renovated the farmhouse on his property, creating a beautiful second home where he spent every weekend and at least 2 weeknights. During the week, he ran Miller Innovations from Boston, flying back and forth in his private helicopter to maximize time with his daughters. "Did he finish the playhouse?" Tiana asked, helping Martha with the decorations. "Just about. George helped him with the roof this afternoon." Martha hesitated. George had to stop early, though. His breathing was bad again. Tiana nodded, concerned. George's health had been declining over the past few months. At 75, his heart wasn't as strong as it once was. "I'll check on him," Tiana said, heading to their bedroom. She found George sitting up in bed, looking at old photo albums. "Found pictures from our first farm dinner," he said as Tiana sat beside him. "Look how scared you looked back then, pregnant and all alone." Tiana smiled at the memory. "I was terrified. But you and Martha saved me." "No," George shook his head. "You saved yourself. We just provided a place for you to do it." The next morning, the farmhouse buzzed with activity. Balloons in 3 different colors, pink for Zara, yellow for Zoe, and purple for Zuri, decorated the living room. Though the triplets were identical in appearance, their personalities had emerged distinctly over the past year. Martha arranged 3 small cakes on the dining table just as David arrived, carrying wrapped presents. "Is the birthday committee ready?" he asked, setting down the gifts. "In the playroom with George," Martha directed. David found his daughters sitting on a colorful mat while George showed them a wooden toy he had carved. All 3 girls had dark curls and David's gray-blue eyes, but their expressions were uniquely their own. "Dada!" Zara noticed him first, pulling herself up using George's leg for support. She took several wobbly steps toward David before falling and crawling the rest of the way. Zoe watched carefully, assessing the situation as she always did before crawling toward her father. Zuri, already standing by a small table, clapped her hands and babbled excitedly. "There are my girls," David said, kneeling to hug all 3. "Happy birthday." The party that afternoon was small but joyful. Michael came from Boston, bringing 3 identical teddy bears wearing different colored ribbons. Martha's sister drove from Vermont with hand-knitted sweaters. The governor and his wife arrived with children's books. After cake, which ended up mostly on the babies' faces, Tiana and David took the girls outside to see the finished playhouse. Built under an apple tree, it was a miniature version of Williams Farm's main house. "This is amazing," Tiana said, watching Zara immediately try to climb the tiny steps while Zoe examined the door hinges and Zuri went straight for the toy kitchen inside. "I might have gone a bit overboard," David admitted sheepishly. "Just a bit." Tiana smiled. As the afternoon turned to evening, most guests departed. David helped clean up while Martha put the tired birthday girls down for a nap. "Have you seen today's tabloids?" Michael asked, showing David his phone. On the screen was a photo of Amanda Wilson at a resort in Monaco, barely recognizable with new plastic surgery. "I don't keep track of her anymore," David said, deleting the email without reading further. Michael put away his phone. "The agricultural division is doing well, by the way. The irrigation system we developed has been implemented at 15 local farms." "That's great," David said. "I want to expand the program next year. Offer it at reduced cost to family farms in the region." Later that evening, after Michael left, David helped George set up tables in the barn for the next day's harvest festival. Despite his weakened health, George insisted on being involved. "You've done good with those girls," George said as they worked. "Didn't think much of you at first, if I'm being honest." David laughed. "I noticed. But you proved me wrong, showed up when it mattered. That means a lot coming from you, George." When they returned to the house, they found Tiana in the kitchen with the triplets in high chairs, attempting to feed them applesauce. "Zuri, please stop putting it in your hair," Tiana pleaded, wiping sticky hands. "Need backup?" David offered, grabbing a spare spoon. Together, they managed to get more food into the babies than on them, working as a team with the practiced efficiency they'd developed over the past year. "Hard to believe they're one already," David said as they cleaned up afterward. "Sometimes it feels like that night at your house was a lifetime ago," Tiana replied. "Other times it feels like yesterday." The next day, Williams Farm hosted its annual Harvest Festival. What began as small farm dinners had evolved into a community event with local vendors, music, and activities for children. Tiana's restaurant provided the food, with David's agricultural team demonstrating new sustainable farming techniques. As evening approached, Tiana found a quiet moment to sit on the farmhouse porch. David joined her, each holding a sleeping baby while Martha rocked Zuri inside. "Your restaurant is a huge success," David said. "The governor told me he's recommending it to everyone in Boston." Tiana smiled. "It still feels surreal sometimes, having my own place, cooking my food my way. You earned it. Your talent was always there. You just needed the chance to showcase it." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the festival-goers enjoy the farm as the sun began to set. "I got a call from my lawyer today," David said finally. "Senator Wilson is dropping his campaign against Miller Innovations. Seems his constituents didn't appreciate him using government agencies for personal vendettas." "That's good news," Tiana replied, "though I doubt he's forgiven you." "I don't need his forgiveness," David said, looking down at Zoe sleeping in his arms. "Just yours." Tiana was quiet for a moment. "We've moved past that, David. We had to, for the girls." George joined them on the porch, moving slowly with his cane. "Beautiful evening," he commented, lowering himself carefully into a rocking chair. "Perfect for the festival," Tiana agreed. Martha came out with Zuri, who had woken up and was reaching for her father. David shifted to hold two babies, while Martha sat beside George, taking his hand in hers. "Quite a family we've put together here," George observed. The word family hung in the air. It wasn't traditional, but it worked for them. David, the tech billionaire who now split his time between Boston and the farm. Tiana, the chef whose restaurant was putting Western Massachusetts on the culinary map. Martha and George, the elderly farmers who had become grandparents to 3 little girls. And the triplets, who were growing up surrounded by love from all sides. "I never expected my life to turn out this way," Tiana said softly, "but I wouldn't change it." "Not even the hard parts?" David asked. Tiana looked at him thoughtfully. "The hard parts led us here. So no, not even those." As stars appeared in the darkening sky, festival lights twinkled across Williams Farm. The triplets were passed around, waking up to watch the lights with wide eyes before drifting back to sleep. There were no declarations of love between David and Tiana, no dramatic reconciliation, just the quiet understanding of two people who had found their way through difficulty to create something meaningful together. Whether their co-parenting would someday evolve into something more remained an open question. For now, they had created a new definition of family that worked for them and provided their daughters with love from both parents. As the last visitors departed and quiet settled over the farm, the unconventional family remained on the porch, content in each other's company under the night sky. If you enjoyed today's video, I'm sure you'll love the next one. Don't waste time. Just click on the screen.